Did you know that depending on what state you're in, it can be illegal for a midwife to practice in your area? For example, I live in the great state of Texas, and if I wanted to have a certified midwife or a traditional midwife at my birth, that would be considered illegal. Did you also know that raw milk is illegal in 36 states? Did you know that the newborn screening, aka the newborn heel prick, is required by law? Did you also know that it's virtually impossible to not vaccinate your child in certain states in the United States? Those are just a few of the crazy things that I learned after being a mom. If you're new to this channel, my name's Olivia. I have a 14-month-old baby boy, definitely looking to have more babies in the future. And so I just want to share these few things that I've learned that are just wild to me, especially with the election coming up. All of this talk about women's rights, I feel like these are all basic women's rights, mothers' rights, and we don't talk about them. I don't feel like they're definitely not in the media, they're definitely not in the news, and these are things that are very important. They're decisions for our children what decision is more important than the ones we make for our own kids? So I just want to do a little deep dive into this, and before we get started, I just want to make sure everyone knows I am not an attorney. I don't study law. I'm not an expert in any of these fields. This is solely based on my own research. It's mostly going to be based on Texas because that's where I live, but I do have some insight into some other states' policies, rules, regulations that I want to talk about. And I just do your own research. And then secondly, depending on when you watch this, laws change all the time, especially with the new president coming around pretty soon. These laws might change, and so do your own research again and definitely check how long ago this video was made. So the first topic I want to talk about is the heel prick. So the newborn screening, if you have a baby in the hospital, I do not know if this happens if you are having a home birth because I don't see this happening at all, but if you are having a hospital birth, they come by after, I think, 24 hours and they do a heel prick. They prick the bottom of your baby's foot, your baby's heel. It's so terrible. They cry like crazy. I hated it so much. And they put their blood in these little circles on a little postcard and they send it off to be tested for all these different types of things. So the things that they test for differ state by state. So depending where you live, you might want to check out what they're testing for. And then you have to come back, I believe it's 1 or 2 weeks later, and do it again. And this is required by law. So I did it with my son. I felt like there was no choice. I didn't think there was a choice. And my sister recently had her baby. And so again, we didn't think that there was a choice. They even asked the nurse at the hospital, hey, what if we decline to do this? And they said over and over that it was required by law, so you have to and you don't have a choice. And when they said what is going to happen if we refuse, they said that they were going to have to get social services involved. So they ended up getting the heel prick, which I personally was just very interested in this. And so I went home and I looked at the FAQs on the website, which I will link that below in the description if you want to check it out. But there is an exemption, a religious exemption that you can file, and you just fill out the form and you can be exempt from doing the heel prick if you don't want to do it. So a couple things. The government will take this heel prick blood, test it, and they keep it for 2 years, depending on what you sign for. So you can either choose to do it for 2 years or 18 years. So I don't understand where the government is collecting all of these things, keeping them organized for 18 years. Where are these stored? These are all things I want to know. I'm very curious about this. But apparently they do that. Online it says they keep it up to 25 years. So I don't know what's right. The hospital form said 18. Not sure what's going on with that. Maybe it has changed. I'm not sure. But I don't really understand the point of this. I don't really understand why they need to keep it for 18 years, what the benefit is. I don't feel like I was informed and I was there when they were talking about it in the hospital. Plus I was there when they talked about it with me. I don't feel like there was informed consent. And also, just so you know, there is a religious exemption. in the state of Texas. Again, it's going to differ depending on where you live. So definitely look it up if you're worried about this. If you don't want to do it, there potentially is a way out, but you're going to have to do your own digging, obviously, because people don't always give you informed consent and they don't always tell you all the things that there is to know about it. Another really crazy thing is raw milk being illegal. So I have heard this over and over. First of all, I did not even realize what raw milk was until I was a mother. So until I turned 26, I did not know what raw milk was. I thought milk at the store was just milk. I did not realize that it was different. So basically, if you don't know what raw milk is, here's just a quick little synopsis of the history of raw milk pasteurization. Other people speak way more eloquently than I will about this, so definitely look into it yourself if you are interested. But basically, there used to be raw milk. That was the standard. That was normal. People drink raw milk. It was sold at stores, whatever. So at some point in New York, they wanted to commercialize, make more money, not have to keep cows in pastures eating grass like normal. So they put them like in high-rise buildings on concrete, and they fed them like excess grains from other companies and other nasty stuff. So this cows were getting sick. The milk was like a pale blue, and they still sold this milk. They tried to do things to compensate for it, and a lot of babies ended up dying because of this. So then doctors were telling mothers not to feed their babies milk, and years go by, and then pasteurization becomes a thing to basically kill all of the enzymes, kill all the vitamins and nutrients. Any bacteria is really what they were trying to get rid of in the milk. And then they do this by heating it up, and then they fortify it, so they put those vitamins back into it. So when you are comparing raw milk versus pasteurized milk, even though pasteurized milk is fortified and the vitamins are put back into it, not naturally, the raw milk still has a way higher concentration of the vitamins and nutrients that you would get in raw milk and regular milk. And although the vitamins are put back in, it's at a lower level for pasteurized milk. Plus, the enzymes that are in raw milk are no longer there. That heating process completely kills them, so they're wiped out, so you don't get that in pasteurized milk. So raw milk, in my opinion, is considered a superfood. It is really great for you. It's way better than pasteurized milk, although it's hard to find. So I found a website which explains each and every state's different rules and regulations on raw milk. So I'm just going to use Texas for example because that is where I live. So it is illegal to sell milk in a retail space. So that means Walmart, you can't walk into Walmart and buy raw milk. That's illegal to sell it in a retail location. Which, the way that we do farming, especially commercialized farming and commercialized dairy, I don't think I would trust raw milk from that because I don't know, I don't feel like they're treating the animals correctly. I don't think that they're on a pasture. I highly doubt they're just eating grass and just like living life. So I don't think that I would even want to walk into a Walmart and ever buy raw milk. So whatever. But you can buy raw milk in Texas through a farm directly. So for example, there is a dairy farm near me. It's about an hour away. So I can go to their farm store and pick up raw milk myself, or a lot of places, a lot of farms like this, they do drop-off locations. So if you get in contact with a farm store like this, a lot of times every single week they'll do like drop-offs in different locations in your metroplex, especially if you live in the city, which is super awesome, really convenient, and you can still get your milk without driving an hour away or however far away a farm that sells raw milk is. So anyways, I will put that link in the description with all the details so you can look at the raw milk rules and regulations and laws in your state. But I just think it's crazy that the government has to get involved in something like this. The fact that farmers cannot sell this anymore, and it's such a like healthy thing for you, it's mind-blowing. And I would have never known this if I didn't become a mom, I don't think. So now let's talk about home birth. So in my opinion, giving birth is one of the biggest rites of passage you could ever have as a mother, as a woman. And so there's all this talk about women's rights and women's right to choose, but yet like the biggest day in a woman's life, a lot of times they don't have the ability to choose every part of it, which I think is a little bit crazy. So the rules on this are definitely going to vary greatly state by state. So definitely look into this yourself. But let's say Texas, for example, Texas regulates home birth and midwifery. So that means if you are a traditional midwife or a certified midwife, you are not allowed to practice in Texas. It's considered illegal to have a traditional or certified midwife at your birth in the state of Texas. So let's just go over the different types of midwifery very quickly. So before I became pregnant, I would have never even have known that there is a difference between different types of midwives. I thought there was just an OB and a midwife, and that's it, but that's not the case. So when you're talking about different types of providers, obviously there's an OBGYN, which they deliver babies in the hospital, and most people understand what an OBGYN is. So they're a doctor, they deliver babies, they do it in a very medicalized way. There's that. So then if we get into midwives, there are different types of midwives. For example, a certified nurse midwife. So it's a CNM. Certified nurse midwife. There is a CPM, which is a certified professional midwife. There is also an LM, which is a licensed midwife, and there's a traditional midwife. So all of these come with different certifications and things. So if you're interested, look into that. In my experience, in my research, I believe a certified nurse midwife is more medicalized because they went to nursing school, and so they are more similar to an OBGYN. So if you have a midwife in a hospital, usually that would be a CNM, a certified nurse midwife. So the others are a little bit more hands-off approach, but it definitely differs depending on who you're going to, their background, what they believe, who they're practicing under. There's so many different things that go into it. But if you're a traditional midwife, you do not have any certifications, you don't have any licensing, you are just like hands-on type of person. You could have had those licensing in the past and taken and gotten rid of them to become a traditional midwife so that you can serve women in a different way. You are not associated with the state, so you do not have to do what they say, basically. So just a little example of this, some women go past 42 weeks, and I believe that that should be a woman's choice. If you want to go past 42 weeks and you feel good and you feel safe and your baby's healthy and you're healthy, like, you should be able to do what you want to do. And if you have a regular provider, most likely they are not going to let that happen. A lot of times they're going to drop your care, sometimes even before 42 weeks. That's when induction starts happening. A lot of times at 41 weeks. It just depends on where you live, who your provider is. So if you are a traditional midwife, you do not have to follow those regulations. If the state says at 42 weeks, you need to be induced or something needs to happen, you don't have to listen to that. You can listen to the mother, you can listen to the woman, and you can go case by case basis instead of being required by the state to have them induced. Or if you go against what the state says, potentially you can be reprimanded for that. You can be sued. There are things. And so it just all depends. It's actually very complicated if you look into it. So to try to simplify all of this, all I'm saying is that in the state of Texas, for example, if I were to have a baby tomorrow and I wanted to have a traditional midwife or a certified midwife at my birth, that would be illegal. That would not be considered allowed or legal in the state of Texas, which I think is crazy that a woman who is giving birth to her own baby in her own body cannot necessarily choose freely who is at her birth. Now, something that I believe is free reign in every state is to have a free birth. If you don't know what that is, it's basically an unassisted birth. You are giving birth in the comfort of your home, outside, wherever you want to give birth, and you're making all the decisions. You might do it alone. You might have a partner there. You're just not having a medical professional there. So you could have a traditional midwife, even if it is not legal per se, you could still do it. And maybe you have to sign something saying you're not going to sue them. It's kind of under the table, but you can always choose to go that route if you want to, if you want freedom of choice to have whoever you want to be there. So there are ways around this. It's complicated. You should look into it yourself if you're interested. I find it very fascinating. So do your own research. So the last topic I want to tackle is your choice to vaccinate or not. So it really doesn't even matter what side you sit on with this. I just believe that, of course, as the mother, you are going to make the decisions that best suit your child. You love your child more than probably anyone else in the world could ever imagine. And so I believe that in almost every case, you're going to make the best decisions for your child. So whether you decide to vaccinate or not, that should be your decision and your decision alone. Now, it is very hard to make that decision in a lot of places. So, for example, I know that California and New York have made that very, very, very difficult. So, this is definitely going to vary state by state. Now, there is the CDC mandated vaccine schedule that is recommended for children, and typically you have to get all those vaccinations in order to send your kid to public school. So this varies state by state, but there are different exemptions which can get you out of that. So whether you decide to just not get a couple of the vaccines, or you decide that you don't want to get any at all, but you still want your kid to go to public school, there are different exemptions for this. So there is a medical exemption. Medical exemption means that your kid was previously injured by a vaccine or has some type of predisposition to vaccines. For example, if your kid has autism, maybe you don't want to get a vaccine because it potentially could make the autism worse, or a vaccine is known to cause autism and you don't want to give that vaccine to your child. You could get a medical exemption depending on where you live, because they make it very difficult, apparently. I do not know that by experience, but that is what I've heard. So do your own research, okay? The next exemption would be a religious exemption. So if you decide that it's against your religious beliefs to vaccinate, you can also get that. And then in a lot of places, they also have a philosophical belief exemption. So if it's just against your personal beliefs, there's an exemption for that. So in Texas, for example, there's not a philosophical belief exemption. There's only a medical and a religious exemption. In other places, for example, California, there is only a medical exemption, and they are trying to get rid of that. I don't believe they have gotten rid of it, but I know it's in the works. I know it's been in the works. And I would check on that if you live in California, because it's possible that that is also not an exemption as well. So then you have to make the decision when you do not have any choice, you do not have any exemptions available to you, then you have to make the decision to either homeschool, which is not feasible for all people to do, or you have to move. Or you have to say, even though I believe that these vaccines are a risk to my child, you still have to get them in order to send your child to public school. So you do have a choice, but the choices are very limited, not good at all. It just is mind-blowing. I already said this, but it should not matter what side you sit on. The fact that a mother doesn't have a true choice in making this decision in certain states is incredibly crazy to me. It is just wild that that is a thing. So those are just a few of the craziest things I've learned since becoming a mother. I hope that those give you like a little bit of like a jumping off point to do some research yourself. I really wish that every woman mother had the choice on all of these things, but unfortunately you don't always have a choice. Even though America is like the freedom state or freedom country, sometimes you don't have a choice necessarily. There are ways around it. I hope I gave a little bit of insight into that. If you have any other like crazy things that you've learned as a mother, I would love to hear them. I love this kind of stuff. So just put them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. And I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.